Investors hoping for another record-breaking week on Wall Street. The second day of trading about to get started after the Dow broke 50,000 for the first time ever. That was on Friday. The Dow did jump more than 1,200 points. Trump said the record was driven by tariffs and predicted the Dow will hit 100,000 by the end of his term. Joining us now to discuss this and more is business and market analyst Seth Jensen. Good morning to you, Seth. Great to have you.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
So after Friday's surge, what does this tell you about where the U.S. economy is headed over the next quarter? Do you agree with the president? It's going to hit 100,000 by the end of his term?
Oh, I don't think I'm going to go on record with that one. But I do think that there's a lot of optimism baked into what we're seeing. We're now seeing the markets react to what it feels is going to be stability under a new Fed chair. I think that many were waiting to see if the president picked somebody with some economic experience that was going to keep the Fed in an independent position. He did. And I think investors are rewarding that. What we are not seeing, though, right now is broad-based earnings growth. We're seeing more optimism growth. That's a good thing. But the one thing I caution people, history oftentimes tells the story. And in midterm years, in the first two quarters, oftentimes we see a little pullback. We thought we might have seen that late midweek last week. That apparently wasn't it. We'll see if we see it before the end of the second quarter.
How do you reconcile this with the deficit? When you look at the deficit that we're seeing right now, and continuously growing billions and billions of dollars every single day. And then you have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that these record highs aren't just about, stocks at the top, but really overall a shift in the economy. So are we starting to see some real broad-based economic recovery?
I mean, the last two quarters have certainly shown that. When we look at when the Trump administration came in, the economy actually contracted in the first quarter. But then it came back roaring at 3.5%, and then it grew again. So we are seeing continuous growth in the economy. The question really becomes, does that matriculate into Main Street? It is one thing for us to see what Wall Street is doing, but until consumers start to feel it in the affordability on Main Street, I think we're still waiting to get over that next hurdle.
AI, Seth, is the hottest story, as we know, in tech. Companies pouring billions into building out AI infrastructure. On the other side of that, though, what jobs do you see most at risk as AI expands, and which sectors do you think are most insulated from AI?
Yeah, let's start with the latter first. I think the insulated jobs are those jobs that require some empathy, some human connection, authenticity. So you think healthcare and jobs like that. I also think that AI, and maybe I'm a bit Pollyannish on this, I think that AI is going to help good work expand, but take out a lot of the busy work. So my oftentimes message to people is that AI is not going to take your job. The person that learns to use it just might.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of like satellite radio. They thought, it's going to kill radio. It just made it bigger. It just made it bigger, right? Zillow forecasting a gradual improvement in 2026 with monthly mortgage payments now about 8.5% lower than a year ago. And inventory really, Seth, slowly rising. So for families who've been, maybe sitting on the sidelines, is this finally the early signal that affordability is starting to turn a corner?
I'm hoping, and we certainly need that inventory number to continue to go up. The problem we got, Jan, is that the 10-year Treasury yield and the bond rates oftentimes help predict the mortgage rates, and the 10-year Treasury yield is sticking well above 4%. If we can start to see that Treasury yield come down under 4%, I think that we are in for a good run on housing again. We'll see mortgage rates fall in line. My tip to people, though, is buy the house, not the mortgage rate. You can refinance, but also recognize, don't get overly optimistic about the future. Understand what you can afford now and stay within your means.
All right, business and market analyst Seth Jensen. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us here on the National News Desk. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I'm national correspondent Kayla Gaskins on Capitol Hill. The national debt is climbing at a staggering pace. A new congressional report shows the debt grows by more than $6 billion a day.
The national debt continues ticking in the wrong direction, now on track to hit the $39 trillion mark by April 12th. New data from congressional Republicans shows the debt increases on average $6.43 billion per day. Interest payments on the debt consume about 13% of the entire federal budget. Government watchdogs say this path is not sustainable.
That number just seems like bananas, and it is. It is a national security problem. It's an economic problem.
The National Taxpayers Union is renewing its call for a balanced budget amendment, arguing it could be the strongest tool to curb what it calls Washington's chronic overspending.
Just the notion that the Congress shouldn't spend more in expenditures than it takes in tax revenues each and every year. That's basically the premise that most families abide by.
A recent National Taxpayers Union poll found a majority of Americans, 54%, say cutting government spending is the best way to tackle the debt. Just 13% said raising taxes is the answer. Others are floating more unconventional solutions. Last week, Medicare and Medicaid Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz suggested the national debt could be reduced if Americans worked longer and delayed retirement.
To start working a year earlier, right out of high school, or work a year later, not retire, it would generate about $3 trillion. $3 trillion to the U.S. economy. That would more than remove the debt.
Elon Musk has argued that only artificial intelligence and automation can prevent what he calls a financial collapse.
We are 1,000% going to go bankrupt as a country and fail as a country without AI and robots. Nothing else will solve the national debt.
Musk's Department of Government Efficiency did find billions of dollars in government waste and fraud, but even he admits it's extremely difficult to cut enough waste to change the big picture national debt problem. On Capitol Hill, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
It's been 1 year since President Trump began his second term, and the Department of the Interior has emerged as a key player in the administration's push for energy dominance, economic growth, and national security. That message was front and center this week when President Trump spoke at the World Economic Forum, challenging global elites on energy, trade, and America First priorities. Joining us now to discuss is Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. Mr. Secretary, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jan. Great to be with you.
Well, thanks for joining us. And the administration says its focus has been on reversing failed policies and really refocusing the federal government on access, affordability, and he mentioned accountability yesterday. What would you say best defines the Interior Department's first year under President Trump's second term?
Well, President Trump's had an amazing first year. Taxes are down, inflation is down, job growth is up, the border is secure, red tape has been cut. This is putting dollars back in Americans' pockets across the country. And of course, President Trump bringing prosperity at home and peace abroad. And what a week he's having in Davos this week, leading the whole world.
Energy certainly front and center at that speech at Davos. The president really drawing this sharp contrast between his economic vision and American energy production and failed globalist policies. As Interior Secretary, we know that you oversee a vast large swath of federal lands, federal resources. How does energy dominance strengthen U.S. leverage abroad and lower costs here at home, especially at a time of this global instability?
Well, energy dominance is really about energy abundance. I mean, people used to talk about energy independence, but energy independence means you're maybe slightly producing a little bit more than you consume. Any changes in the world market shoot the prices up at the pump for Americans. But when we can sell energy to our friends and allies versus have them buy it from our adversaries, this is how we take the influence of people like Iran or Russia off the table. In terms of the global thing. And with President Trump, what's happening in America, what's happening in Venezuela, literally this is life-changing, where we're moving the geopolitical center of oil to the west, back to the Western Hemisphere, which means jobs for Americans, lower prices at the pump, and national security, and our ability to do things like we have displaced 67% of the Russian gas that Western Europe was dependent on by shipping LNG from America to Europe. And President Biden had stopped our ability even to build LNG export facilities. Just crazy stuff versus us having an opportunity again to sell energy to our allies, bring prices down for Americans.
Yeah, President talked about that. In fact, he also criticized over-regulation and bureaucratic delays. You talked a lot about permitting reform and cutting all that red tape. So what has the Interior done to streamline permitting and regulatory processes on federal lands, and what impact are you seeing right now really at the state and local levels?
Well, this is important, Jan, because federal lands make up about 20% of America, but sometimes even more than that in terms of where our energy production, our mining is going on in this country, timber, grazing on federal lands. And that includes both offshore as well as onshore. But President Trump, some of these permitting process took years, in some cases decades. There was a mine in Arizona that had been trying to get a permit for 29 years. Under President Trump, it happened in 4 months. We've taken processes that take 1 year and 2 years. We've got them down to 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and without cutting any corners, just not letting these permits, sit on someone's inbox in their email for a month before the next person picks it up and moves it forward. So it is in a whole new world. The private sector is learning they've got to move at the speed of Trump, and this is not the speed of government anymore. And President Trump is moving quickly, because if we don't have national security around energy, we don't have national security at all. And so he gets it, he understands it, and energy diplomacy is one of the reasons he's been able to end these 8 wars abroad.
As you head into year 2, what are the Interior Department's top priorities when it comes to energy and critical minerals, strategic lands? What should Americans be watching for next?
Well, I think we've had a fantastic year under President Trump's leadership, basically turning the ship around from the failed policies that much of Europe and the Biden administration was pushing. But when we look forward to this year, this is driving forward. It's building great things quickly. I mean, building infrastructure like the Alaskan LNG pipeline, which will help us secure peace in the Pacific and create opportunities to sell to our allies, Japan and Korea. Greenland in the news today again. Greenland has an opportunity to be to America what Alaska was. And again, that was a purchase that the United States made of Alaska. People at the time called it Seward's Folly. And of course, Alaska thriving today, strong economy, huge budget build up where they can provide payments to all of the citizens in Alaska, and an energy powerhouse for America. So President Trump's got vision for the future, whether it's in securing Latin America or providing security for North America and NATO. And how fun it is to be executing against all these things that are, again, making the world safer and Americans more prosperous.
And we will be watching how this all plays out in the months ahead, and hope to check back in with you again. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate the update.
Thank you, Jan.